Part 115. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1141. Chapter 1141. Which pot goes with which lid? Kayun hurriedly went to get pen and paper, and the prince also said, "I'll go to the front to see if there's anything going on here. I'll send someone to send a message at any time." Mrs. Li and Jiyan quickly stood up and saluted. The prince stopped him again and said with a smile, "Old madam, don't be polite. You took care of me a lot back in Rujintan. Now that you have entered the palace, I should repay you a little bit. Of course, if the old lady still feels sorry, then when the fruits on the mountain are ripe, can you give me 2 baskets? After entering the palace, I often thought about the food in the village. I always felt that the delicacies from the mountains and seas were not as fragrant as the rice in the big pot, and the fruits were not as sweet as the fruits in our mountains." Okay, old Mrs. Li was coaxed to smile and replied, "Don't worry, Prince, the fruits will be delivered as soon as they are ripe. Prince can eat as much as he wants." After chatting for a few more words, the prince went out. The crown princess, the concubines, and the beauties were kneeling and staggering. When they heard the footsteps, they couldn't help but look over, with surprise in their eyes. Although the prince is gentle and rarely loses his temper, he rarely smiles. They racked their brains, but they couldn't figure out the prince's temper and preferences. But why is the prince smiling so happily at this moment? After hearing the good news, I purified my hands and quietly copied the scriptures. Although it's a bit laborious, it's much easier than kneeling outside. On the contrary, the third princess stared at the door in a daze. Her face gradually lost the indifferent look just now, and her expression became a little more confused and sad. Old Mrs. Li sighed inwardly, stepped forward and carefully shook her hand, and whispered, "Princess, when a person dies, it is actually over. All good and bad or love and hate are over. For those of us who are still alive, learn to feel sorry for yourself and learn to be more open-minded." The third princess lowered her head, her eye circles slowly turning red. She held old Mrs. Li's hand with her backhand and responded with a choked sob, "Old madam, people think that I, a princess, am noble and noble. In fact, I am just a poor child who has no father and no mother. My father's heart is all about the country, power, and government. As for the Queen Mother, her heart is always set on giving birth to a prince, and occasionally she gives some of her thoughts to her parents' family. If I, the princess, were not a bit unruly and often got into trouble, it would be difficult for me to meet them. I have always been very envious of the good news and have been looking forward to it. Being your child rich or poor, the whole family will get together to eat, laugh, and discuss things together. It is lively and close. Unlike my mother, she hasn't had a meal with me for many years, but now that she is dead, why do I feel so empty?" Mrs. Li listened to her quietly without interrupting. Heart disease is when a heart injury is covered for a long time, it rots and suppurates, and eventually kills one. Opening the wound like this and letting it dry will actually help recovery. Jiyan kept writing, listening to the third princess whispering softly, talking about those grievances, those past, those regrets. Outside the house, everyone began to bow down for the last time in the morning. Some people may not be able to hold on, taking air conditioning, exclaiming, and apologizing, but it gradually became more lively. Soon, lunchtime came and everyone could finally have a rest. Even if they smelled the rotten smell and ate 2 dishes and 1 meal with watery soup, no one complained. Jiyan sprinkled some medicinal powder under the doors and windows while walking around. The smell in the room was lighter and could be ignored. Kayun carried the food box and specially brought food from Highland Palace. The third princess talked a lot, and the depression in her heart was released, and her complexion improved obviously. She ate with Jiyan and Mrs. Li, and shared a fruit plate after the meal. Kyun helped Mrs. Lee take a lunch break in the small cubicle at the back of the house. Jiyeon was worried that her second uncle would miss her, so she excused herself to change clothes and wanted to find a young to deliver the message. As a result, as soon as I went out, I saw a young woman walking around, looking very hesitant. Perhaps the young woman did not expect the good news to come out, so she was startled, but then she stepped forward to salute. The princess is well. Jiyeon looked familiar to her, thought about it carefully, and quickly returned the greeting, his wife is well. The young woman is none other than the wife of the crown prince of Jeonkyeo Palace and the queen's cousin. Her maiden name is Woo Billion. At the beginning, when she was not married, she also had a lot of troubles. Fortunately, he finally came to his senses and married into the Duke of Jeonkyeo. The Prince of Jeonkyeo also got into trouble a lot, but after getting married, he actually calmed down and lived a good life. The young couple is famous for their affection in New Zealand, which makes people have to admit that their marriage is destined to be. Which pot goes with what lid? Don't worry about whether it looks good or not, just suit it. Jiyeon looked at Woo Billion and hesitated to speak, so she asked, is the crown prince's wife here to see the princess? Do you need me to inform you? No, no. Woo Billion quickly waved her hands and said, the princess misunderstood, I'm not here to see the princess, I'm here to thank the princess. My mother-in-law was feeling unwell just now thanks to the princess, she gave her a mint candy, so she didn't make a fool of herself. Thank you very much, princess, for your help. When the time comes, the prince and I will definitely come to express our gratitude. Oh, that's not necessary. Jiyeon shook his head and replied, it's just a little effort, and it shouldn't be like this. The weather is hot. Madam Prince will go back to find a doctor to prescribe a refreshing medicine for the old lady, sew 2 purses, or do something. The sugar that stimulates body fluids and quenches thirst will definitely make the old lady feel better. Woo Billion nodded repeatedly and asked, Princess, are those mint candies sold in Byungjeon? My mother-in-law never forgets. Jiyeon understood instantly, took off the bag containing the candy, and handed it over. I still have a few pieces here, please take them, Madam Prince. In addition, mints are sold in Byungjeon, so you can just send your servant to buy them. Woo Billion was overjoyed. She took the purse with a blushing face and bowed to express her thanks. At this time, the third princess heard the noise and came out, so she could not help but salute again. According to seniority, Woo Billion is the cousin of the third princess. In the past 2 years, the queen was ill, the Woo family arranged a marriage, Woo Billion married into the Jeonkyeo Duke's mansion, and never entered the palace again. Naturally, the third princess is not close to her. After saying a few words, Woo Billion left. The third princess asked curiously, and Jiyeon told her about the mints. The third princess couldn't help but say, you are such a good person, you always take care of others wherever you go. It's all within my power. I can't let this old lady feel uncomfortable. She's older than my grandma. Jiyeon hugged the third princess's arm and responded with a smile. She raised her chin to signal the third princess to look at Woo Billion's back. This is a smart man. The prince was at first, but now he has become a good husband. You see, it doesn't matter who a woman marries, it's important to figure out how to live her life, right? The third princess knew that the good news was trying to persuade her, so she avoided the conversation and joked, you are a little girl, don't keep talking about these things, otherwise you will not be able to get married if others hear it. At this time, a young in the distance poked his head at the door. The guards caught him and asked him a few questions, and then let him go. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1142. Chapter 1142, Things don't have to be small, they just need to be useful. Your Royal Highness, Princess, this little said he was sent by Uncle Lee and wants to see the princess. The guard said, and the little quickly knelt down and kowtowed, looking very frightened. Your Highness Princess, I didn't break into the palace on purpose. It's actually Uncle Lee who is worried about Mrs. Lee and asked me to come over and inquire. The third princess waved her hands, then nodded to Jian and entered the room. Jian thanked the guards and then asked the young a few questions. She was relieved to hear that her second uncle, Mr. Wen, and others were doing well and that they didn't have any signs of heat stroke. Then she called Kaiun to come forward and gave her 5 small bottles. Kaiun, do me a favor. Follow this little father-in-law on a trip and give these to my second uncle. Kaiun quickly responded with a smile. Li Laoer and others had been in the sun for most of the morning, and finally took a break. They were very tired. Each one took a mouthful of rice, and like dehydrated salted fish, they slumped on their chairs and refused to get up. They didn't care about their image at all. Kaiun and the young entered the side hall from the outside and walked along the wall to Li Laoer. Li Laoer was drowsy, but he immediately woke up when he saw the two of them. Kaiun saluted and said in a low voice, "Uncle, this servant is Kaiun, the eldest palace maid beside the third princess. The princess asked me to go and give something to my uncle." After saying that, she took out a few small bottles. Li Laoer took it and looked at it carefully before asking about my mother and niece. Kaiun didn't hide anything, she said it carefully. Li Laoer breathed a long sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Thanks to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and His Royal Highness the Princess for taking special care of me." Kaiun saw many officials looking over and left quickly. Li Laoer rewarded the young eunuch, watched him go out, and opened the small bottle. Mr. Wen came over and smiled when he smelled the refreshing scent. "Mint candy? Give me one. It's so hot that I can even fall asleep while walking." Li Laoer gave him a bottle and went next door to look for Jian, Lu's Haiheng, and Mrs. Lu. When he came back, Mr. Wen was already holding an empty bottle and was about to cry. Before Li Laoer could ask, more officials came around. Finally, it was hard to stay up until the sun set, and the morning officials and wives came out of the palace one after another. The carriages, horses, and servants who had been waiting at the gate of the palace for a whole day also became lively. Thinking that there are still 6 more days like this, everyone feels desperate, but they don't dare to show it. In the Earl's mansion, Grandma Chang has already prepared meals and put out bath water. Everyone quickly took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and finally got rid of the embarrassment of being sweaty and smelly. When the food was served, everyone talked about today's events while eating. Li Laoer drank the lotus seed soup and said to his niece with a smile, "Fu Niuer, bring us more mint candies tomorrow. The ones we brought today were all snatched up by others, and Mr. Wen and I only got 2. Jian also looked helpless and proud, and echoed, "Me too, even someone I don't know has been chatting with me for a long time just for a candy. I might as well just give him one to save me some saliva." Jian smiled and mixed the cold skin for Grandma, and responded casually, "We have it in our shop. Let them all go to the shop to buy it, and the business will definitely be more prosperous." "Are you crazy because of the heat?" Jian reminded him. "Funny, isn't our shop closed?" "Oh," Jian was startled and replied, "I really forgot. Just now in the palace, I asked the prince and his wife to go to the shop to buy it." Mrs. Lee patted her granddaughter's hand and comforted her, "It's a small matter. It's so late. It's impossible to go to the Duke's house to buy it. Just bring some more to give away tomorrow." Jian nodded. At this time, the situation was, "I'm nervous, it's really hard to send someone away. It would be best if we meet tomorrow and give you another bottle." It's not that she wants to make good friends with the Duke and his family, it's just that she doesn't want to break her promise. Although they had no appetite, everyone still managed to eat most of the food. After dinner, Zheng He also came back with news about the fleet. "Uncle, our boat is sailing smoothly and we are 200 miles away at noon. I'm afraid it will be even further by this time." Everyone felt relieved after hearing this. They insisted on saying a few words and then dispersed to rest. As if just as soon as I close my eyes, the sky in the east turns pale, and a new day begins. In every household, I don't know how many people are complaining and secretly cursing, but they still have to rush to the palace without delay. Compared with yesterday, today the third princess made the decision. After only one round of kneeling, she invited Mrs. Li and Jian to the side hall to continue copying scriptures. The little fox finally realized that he had an owner and came over to join in the fun. But the weather is too hot, and no one can carry a fluffy little stove. So, the popular little fox fell out of favor for the first time. When the prince came over at noon, it jumped decisively into his arms and continued to hug the dragon's lap. The prince didn't mind it either, so he fed it some fruit, said a few words to the others, and then left. When the crown princess and others outside the door saw it, they immediately became interested. I won't talk about the hard work of everyone in the palace, but I will only talk about the broken gold beach. Because the children have left, it is really deserted. In the semi-dry river outside the village, there are no more shirtless boys fishing for fish or having water fights. There are no more children carrying baskets on their backs to mow the grass at the foot of the mountain. Even in the orchard, there is no need to worry about children harming the green fruits. At mealtime, there is no longer a woman holding her neck and shouting at the bastard. Everyone is a little uncomfortable, and from time to time they gather under the big tree at the entrance of the village, looking at the path, not knowing what they are looking forward to, what they are missing. In the past, the village chief would have given some advice, but now he had no time. He got in the car and went around the villages with Uncle Zhao. Of course, the residents of several villages gave him a warm reception. Finally, they gathered together at Zheng's house in the view of the big locust tree to kill chickens and stew meat, and sat across from each other to drink wine. While he was still drunk, the village chief said, "Brothers, we have nothing else to do here today. We just want to tell you. Our village will be closed for a month. If it is not necessary, we will not be able to enter or leave. You all say hello to the villagers and don't go there." Jing Lijian and others were all surprised when they heard this and asked, "What happened? Why is the village suddenly closed?" The village chief waved his hand and said with a smile, "Isn't this the queen's death? The master's family is crying in the city. There is no one in the village who can make the decision, so the village is simply closed. If you are usually afraid of delaying the children's studies, now outside the city schools have been closed for a month, and even Mr. Zhang has gone to the city to play, so there is no need to worry about it." Jing Li was waiting for someone to nod. This reason sounded quite reasonable. The village chief added, "Speaking of which, things in and outside the city haven't stopped since the beginning of the new year, which is really a bad sign. My right eyelid is twitching every day and it never stops. I always feel like there might be something big happening someday." Jing Lijian slapped his thigh and replied, "Brother, we are really the same. Me too, I feel uneasy. After how many years I have lived, no matter how difficult life is, it seems that it is not as urgent as it is now." Panicked. Hey guys, today I'm going to update a single episode. Huahua is working hard to build a more exciting plot in the future. Hugs, come on. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1143. Chapter 1143. A distinguished guest is coming to the Lu mansion. The other two Li Zheng also nodded and pulled the village chief's sleeves as if jokingly begging. "Brother, my family trusts you the most. I have almost entrusted you with this golden beach. Didn't my family reveal some information to you?" "Yes, brother, tell us a few words." The village chief was still vague, "It's no big deal. We ordinary people live our lives honestly at all times, so there is nothing to be afraid of." Uncle Zhao, on the other hand, had a bad temper and shouted something out loud. "What do you have to ask? It's so obvious. The queen mother is dead, the imperial concubine is in the cold palace, the prince has chosen his concubine, and the princess is married. Who is left in the palace?" Jingli was stunned for a moment, then his expression changed. "Who is left in the palace and nothing happened? Of course it's the emperor." Several people took a breath of air, shut their mouths, and did not dare to ask any more questions. The village chief glared at Uncle Zhao and tried his best to look back to make amends. "Oh, if old Zhao drinks too much, he will talk nonsense. The Tianwu kingdom is peaceful and the people are safe, and life is going well." "Yes, yes, the country is peaceful and the people are safe. Yes, yes, we are just ordinary people. We work hard to farm and live our lives at all times." Jing Lijian and others also hurriedly agreed, shouting and pouring wine, and talked about family shortcomings. As the sun set in the west, the village chief and Lao Zhao got into the car drunkenly and said goodbye to everyone. After the carriage was far away, the three of Jing, Lijian, and Jing got together to discuss it, and then they all hurried back to their respective villages. "Don't worry about the truth or falsehood, don't worry about the changes in the city, just follow the footsteps of Zinken." So, soon the villagers in the three villages received the news that the village was closed. No entry or exit is allowed. Everyone in the village, old or young, was squatting in the village. When I had nothing to do, I went to carry water. Carrying a bucket of water can only support a few crops. Sleep when you are tired from carrying water, so naturally you have no other thoughts. The village chief and Lao Zhao lay on the carriage, paying no attention to anything, and allowed the old horse pulling the cart to pull them home. Lao Zhao looked at the setting sun on the horizon and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Brother, our boat should have gone very far, right?" "Yes, I guess it's more than 200 miles away." The village chief smiled bitterly, "I'm afraid my old lady is scolding me." Old Zhao laughed and responded, "My sister-in-law usually has a good temper, but I don't care about you. I'm afraid she is really angry this time. You can wait until we meet later to deal with it." The village chief sighed, "If we meet again in the future, I will accept whatever she wants to do to deal with her." The two large ships heading south are currently docked at the dock of a small county town, waiting for the family's cargo ship to come and join them. There are many checkpoints on the way south. The two ships have no cargo and only a few hundred old, young, women and children. It is really eye-catching. But it makes sense for several of the family's cargo ships to travel together and spread out the people. Because everyone was leaving in a hurry, the family's cargo ship had to be loaded, so it was 1 day behind. We would not be able to catch up until noon tomorrow. Jian, Mao Gear, Zhaiman, Xiaja, and Guo Wenhao were all busy, helping the guards of the home mansion patrol the two boats to guard against prying eyes from outsiders, or if a child ran off the boat because of ignorance. Jie Huan took over the back warehouse and was responsible for the shopping and 3 meals a day for everyone. Lu Biatu took the people in a small boat and floated outside, waiting to pick up the family's cargo ship. Mr. Zhang led the children to continue studying. His teaching was not rigid and he never followed the textbook. At this time, he would point to the county town outside the boat and explain to the children the history of the county town, who has produced it, and what specialties it has. In the shade behind the boat, women such as Tao Hongying and Wan'er were doing needlework. Gossip. Aunt Wu always had a bad look on her face. She had clearly agreed with the old man to stay in the village, and the old man agreed. How could she have imagined that he would actually lie to her? Tao Hongying heard Aunt Wu breathing heavily and quickly exchanged glances with her niece-in-law. Wan'er understood and pulled the needle and thread in her hand and asked Aunt Wu, "Auntie, look at the belly band I embroidered for Yuan Yuan." Why does the bird look more and more like a duck the more it is embroidered? Aunt Wu is good at embroidery and also likes embroidery. When she lowered her head and looked at it, she immediately said, "The color of your embroidery thread is wrong, and there are too many embroidery on the edges." After saying that, she took it and helped to correct it. Wanner smiled and praised beside her, "Auntie is really amazing. I was very envious of Aunt Huanayang before. Most of the clothes and pants for her twins were sewn by her, and they were all exquisite. It's just that Aunt Huanayang has been taking her children to Quanzhou for a long time. The two children must have grown a lot now, and I'm afraid they won't be able to fit into their original clothes." Tao Hongying immediately said, "What does it matter? We will be there in a few days. With my aunt by my side, the two children will still need new clothes." Hui Niang said she misses my aunt almost every day. Suddenly I saw my aunt arriving. I don't know how happy she will be. Sure enough, Aunt Wu looked much better when she thought of her goddaughter and grandchildren. The soil and water in the south support people, so the two children must have grown up a lot, right? I wonder if they remember me, my grandmother. Tao Hongying said quickly, "You must remember that, children are the smartest. They will kiss whoever treats them well. You must know that they were raised by the ants since they were young, how could they forget?" The other women also talked about some interesting things about raising children, and the atmosphere gradually became lively. Tao Hongying breathed a sigh of relief, lowered her head and started sewing. She was not good at it, and she was worried about home, so she sewed the half skirt in her hand into a mess. Wanner silently took the needle and thread, and then put her son into her aunt's arms. Things are unpredictable and no one knows what will happen in the next moment. It's nothing more than soldiers coming to cover up the water and earth. Do what you can do, and calmly face those things you cannot do. Under the same sky, different people are busy. At the southwest border, there is the largest and most magnificent mansion in the middle of the city. The mansion is home to the young and old of the Liu family who have guarded the border for generations. General Liu has a different surname and is named King, which is enough to show that he has great military achievements and is loyal. Even though he is nearly 50 years old, he still dresses neatly and leads people to patrol the border every day. He works conscientiously and never refuses to be lazy. This is also the reason why people throughout the southwest border highly respect and trust him. It can be said that here, some people are disrespectful to the imperial court, but absolutely no one will be disrespectful to General Liu. As the sun set in the west, General Liu rode his horse to the door. He jumped off his horse, threw the whip and reins to the guards, and asked loudly, "Where is the distinguished guest?" The butler who had just greeted us immediately said, "Back to the general, the distinguished guest has been invited to the study room, and Commander Shen is accompanying him to drink tea." The old general nodded and immediately strode to the backyard, washed off the wind and sand, changed into light home clothes, and then went to the study. The guard guarding the door saw his master approaching and quickly opened the door. The old general strode in and saw two people sitting in the room. One was his most trusted military advisor and his best friend throughout his life, and the other was a young master. This young man looks to be in his 20s. He is dressed in a moon-white silver robe with dark patterns and floral patterns. His black hair is with a mutton-fat jade hairpin, which makes his slightly thin face a little softer. Had it not been for the tan skin, going out like this, I would definitely be able to bear the words "a young man like a jade." Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1144. Chapter 1144. Tell a story to the general. Without waiting for the introduction by the military advisor, General Liu laughed and said, "Is this Jiren? I have always heard my son mention you, but it was not until today that we met for the first time." Li Jiren quickly stood up and gave the junior salute. "Your Majesty is well, I came here rashly, I hope you will forgive me." Old General Lu helped him up and responded boldly, "Jiaran, don't be like this. You and my son are close friends. In the past 6 months, you have been carrying things and letters for him. It's not too late for me to thank you." After saying that, he asked Jiaran to sit down again and poured him tea with his own hands. Jiaran stood up and saluted and thanked him. After sitting down, he smiled and said, "I have been in southwest China for half a year. I have always wanted to come and visit the prince, but I have no choice but to be busy and have no choice but to postpone it until now. I wonder if the prince is in good health." "Okay, okay." Old General Lu drank the tea in the cup in one gulp and said, "Call me General, the title of this prince is the Emperor's kindness. In fact, I am just a big boss who kills and kills, and I use the title of prince. I'm afraid those people in Zindu will start gossiping again." "General, you're welcome. Your prince's title is based on the accumulation of actual military achievements among the rich princes in Zindu who only know how to walk birds and admire flowers. 100 of them combined are not as good as you." Jiaran's words were not polite. During his time in the southwest, he had learned about the arrogance of foreigners outside the border and the hard work of the border guards. He was sincerely grateful and admired. As people age, they become better. General Lu and military advisor Shen could naturally tell whether Jiaran's words were sincere or flattering. As a result, the two of them fell in love with him even more. Old General Lu even complained about his son, "That boy in my family really deserves to be beaten. I know a young and talented person like you, but I don't even tell my family about it. Otherwise, you can choose any of my daughters. Do we have a good son-in-law in the Lu family?" Jiaran smiled and said, "Thank you for your attention, General, but I already have a good wife at home and my eldest son was born. I can only live up to the General's love." Lao General Lu was not angry either, he laughed heartily. After a while, the banquet in the backyard was delivered. Jiaran came here this time not for official business, but for a private visit. Hence, General Lu didn't have many people to accompany him. Even his concubine didn't call over. Only Commander Shen was present. The three of them were half full and began to change cups. The Lu family has lived in the southwest for a long time. Although there are people in the new capital and news is constantly being passed on, General Lu still asked a few more questions about the new capital. After all, everyone in Tianwu knew that the Li family was a popular person in front of the emperor and was extremely favored by the emperor. They must know more information. Jiaran only talked about some new things in Zindu, but didn't say a word about the court. General Lu took advantage of the opportunity to pour the wine and looked at each other with the military advisor. The military advisor smiled and said, "Master Li, our prince has written back many times, speaking highly of you and your family. Our general has always wanted to repay you a little bit, but he has never had the chance. Mr. Li is here today. I wonder if Mr. Li has any difficulties in the 6 months since he took office. If so, sir, just tell me and we will definitely help you." Jiaran lowered his eyes, playing with the wine glass in his hand, and his mind was spinning. After testing for so long, I have a little more trust in General Lu. In this way, he can speak more clearly. Jiaran put down his wine glass and said with a smile, "Thank you, old general, and military advisor. Although my small county is barren and has many problems, I am still competent. But I heard a story before and thought it was very interesting. I wanted to tell it to the old generals and military advisors." General Lu and military advisor Su were both surprised and didn't understand why he was telling the story. But the two of them nodded, poured the wine, and prepared to listen. Jiaran smiled and said, "Actually, it's not a particularly magical story, it's just that someone in the story is too ridiculous. It is said that there is a city. The city owner is reasonable and kind, and the people live in peace, and the people who protect the city from the surrounding bandits are the Zhao family and the Qian family, two military general families. They have made great achievements in war and are praised by the people. The children of the two families were fortunate enough to meet each other, study and play together, just like brothers with different surnames. Among them, the Zhao family has many children, but only one girl, so she is loved by all the brothers in the family. When we occasionally play together, this girl also follows her brothers in and out, so she is familiar with the boys from the Qian family. General Lu sounded familiar and looked at Commander Shen, but Commander Shen frowned. Jiaren didn't seem to notice their expressions. He took a sip of wine and continued, gradually, these boys and girls have grown up, studying and testing for fame, and each has achieved his or her own achievements. At this time, the city wanted to find a son-in-law for his daughter, and he took a fancy to the boy from the Qian family. The Qian family was naturally willing, and the boy from the Qian family also agreed, so they got engaged. The boy from the Zhao family was also happy for the boy from the Qian family, but unintentionally, the boy from the Zhao family discovered that the boy from the Qian family actually had a crush on his sister, and his expression became more and more obvious. It just so happens that the daughter of the Zhao family and the daughter of the city lord get along very well, and they are more than 10 years apart from the boy from the Qian family. So, the boy from the Zhao family reminded the boy from the Qian family to pay attention to his words and deeds, so as not to cause trouble and harm himself and the Zhao family. The boy from the Qian family promised very well. He always asked the city lord's daughter to play with him, but in fact he just wanted to see the girl from the Zhao family. The girl from the Zhao family was smart and discovered it quickly, so she avoided seeing her. Commissioner Shen's expression had completely changed, and old General Lu finally guessed what was going on. He opened his mouth to speak in annoyance, but was grabbed by his sleeve by the military advisor. Li Jiaren smiled, poured himself a glass of wine, and continued. Later, the city lord wanted to set a date to get married, but the boy from the Qian family pretended to be ill and delayed it. Soon, the Zhao family's city defenses were repeatedly destroyed, and even the military rations were destroyed. The Zhao family investigated some clues, and the person behind the attack was the Qian boy. It's just that the Zhao family doesn't know what the boy from the Qian family has planned. Does he want to force the Zhao family to marry the girl to him as a concubine? Not to mention whether the city lord girl is willing, even the Zhao family would rather die than suffer this humiliation. The Zhao family did not reveal this matter for the sake of the peace of the city, but it happened that the bandits began to invade again, and the Zhao family had to fight against the enemy with all their strength. Any negligence may lead to unnecessary sacrifices or even the fall of the city. At this time, all the Zhao family wants is that the Qian family should stop being selfish and absurd and put the overall situation first. Isn't this an excessive request? Lao General Lu and military advisor Shen no longer knew what to say. Jiaren didn't expect them to say anything, and sneered. It stands to reason that the Qian family boy said he likes the Zhao family girl from the very beginning. Even if they are more than 10 years apart, the Zhao family will reject her politely without hurting their face. After all, it's human nature for a family to have a daughter. But the hateful thing about the Qian boy is that he didn't want to be disliked by the city lord, so he agreed to marry the city lord's girl, and he secretly coveted the Zhao girl. Should this boy from the Qian family be taught strictly, if he continues to let it go, he might disturb the peace of the city. The most innocent ones are the Zhao family. They have sacrificed their lives to protect the city for many years. Not only do they have to endure humiliation, they even end up being hated by the city lord. How unfair. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1145. Chapter 1145, My Own Children Smoke at Home. Jiaren didn't speak loudly, but every word was like a nail, hammering directly into the hearts of General Lu and military advisor Shen, causing them to lower their heads in shame and annoyance. There was a deathly silence in the room. After a long time, Jiaren laughed again. I'm sorry, old general. I was drunk and said too much. By the way, our caravan has just arrived this time. The Crown Prince Su was a little busy because of his wedding, so he didn't prepare anything for the general. But my sister gave me a lot of good wine and snacks from Zindu. I shared some, borrowed flowers and offered them to the old general to taste, and asked the general not to dislike them. Feng Jiaren smiled proudly and said, I'm not praising you, but in terms of dim sum in Zindu, my sister's shop Bianjian is the best. My sister was pampered by the family and grew up. She is a woman with a needlework, but her cooking skills are so good that even the emperor praised her. The Marquis was away with the Northern Expeditionary Army. When he came back from delivering the letter, he was still thinking about the snacks baked by my sister. Woolen cloth. Speaking of which, our family and the Marquis have common concerns, and they don't feel at ease in marrying my sister to anyone previously. The emperor wanted to grant a marriage, but the Marquis pushed it away because he was afraid of wronging my sister. My sister is also sensible. She never says anything when she is wronged occasionally. Otherwise, if the Marquis knows about it, he will probably come back immediately with an army of 100,000 people. Grandmaster Shen looked very embarrassed and replied dryly, that's right, the princess is really lucky. Jiaren accepted it as he saw fit, stood up, straightened his clothes, and said goodbye. After bothering the old general and the military advisor for so long, it's time for me to say goodbye. I will definitely come to visit the old general again when I have some free time another day. Jiaren left the Lu family all the way and rushed back to Fengshan County with his people overnight. Seeing that there was no one in front of the door, Commander Shen hurried back to the study. General Lu had already banged the table loudly and cursed angrily. You bastard, you are so angry with me. I thought he was working hard in Zindu, so I sent him so many people and used the money as he pleased. I didn't expect him to use it to do such despicable things. Grandmaster Shen wanted to persuade him, but he didn't know what to say. Logically speaking, one cannot draw a conclusion on this matter without asking the prince personally. But the prince had been writing letters saying how good the Li family was, and Li Jiaren was the new top scholar and was appointed as the county magistrate nearby. No matter from any aspect, it was impossible for the Li family to slander the prince for no reason. If it is true as Li Jiaren said, then the prince's troubles will be too great. Even though he was in the remote southwest, he had heard of Princess Kangol. The caravan from the Marquis mansion was here looking for people to buy gems the year before last, in order to prepare a birthday gift for Princess Kangol on the order of Marquis Zinting. That attitude is like searching all over the world just to be happy in exchange for my daughter. Now that his heir apparent is so coveted and persecuted, even if Zintinghao has no time to take care of him at the critical moment of the northern expedition, he will never let go of the culprit after victory and triumph. The more Commander Shen thought about it, the more worried he became, and for a moment he was at a rare loss of what to do. Old General Lu lost his temper, then calmed down and said, Strategic advisor, I'm going to make a hard trip to the new capital. Old General Lu shook his head, no, that treacherous boy seems to be well behaved and smart, but if he really gets into trouble, he may not be able to get out for a while. Li Jiaren's words don't sound nice, but every word of it is correct. If the royal family really knows about this matter, not only our Lu family will be punished, but the Li family will also be implicated. Princess Kangol is even more innocent. If something happens, it will hinder future marriages. Our Lu family has been loyal and honest for generations, and we can't do anything to harm a woman. What's more, the northern expedition is over and the Marquis of Zinting has returned. I am also afraid that the traitor will not be able to bear the lessons of others. Why don't we take action to discipline him first, so as to save some face for the traitor? After saying that, he went to the wall, picked off a golden whip, and handed it to the military advisor. Take this golden whip to Zindu. When we meet, I will first give my traitor 20 lashes, and then I will discipline him. Tell him that once the princess becomes pregnant, let him come back quickly, otherwise his life will be in danger. Afraid of life, the military advisor was surprised and retorted, the general may be overly worried. The princess is pregnant, and the royal family should be happy. The general shook his head, his expression more solemn than ever. You take the royal family too simply. Nothing in this world can be hidden from the eyes and ears of the royal family. The crown prince thinks he is hiding something, but destroying military supplies and stumbling upon the Northern Expeditionary Army is such a big deal. How could he not reveal it? Any trace? If the Marquis of Zinting knows it, if the Li family knows it, then everyone in the world will know it. Also, don't underestimate a woman's intelligence. The princess is the prince's pillow, and sooner or later she will find out the prince's thoughts. If the princess doesn't show deep affection, it's fine, but if... The old general sighed, if you use deep feelings, the deeper your hatred will be. Once the princess becomes pregnant, this child will bear the blood of the royal family and the Lu family, and will be able to take over the military power in my hands. The prince's consort, who betrayed his wife and trampled on the dignity of the princess, has no need to exist anymore. The military advisor didn't speak for a long time, and finally he could only add, General, don't worry too much, in case the princess doesn't find out, or she gives birth to a girl. But the old general waved his hand and said, being a boy or a girl is not a problem for the royal family. Even if a daughter is really born, just pick up a kid outside and say he is born to a princess. How dare we, the Lu family, test blood for marriage? The military advisor was speechless. Far away in the princess's mansion in Zindu, at this moment, figures were shaking on the big bed in the palace. The third princess didn't know that her father-in-law had figured out her thoughts. Of course, even if she knew it, she wouldn't be afraid. Being from a royal family means you have the capital to be arrogant. What's more, the Lu family was unjust in this matter. Besides, it is not easy for Jiaran to take people to the border. Uncle Hei's caravan traveled day and night to Fengshan County. He read the letters from home and knew that his sister had been wronged. He wished he could fly back to Zindu and chop Lu Zong into pieces to relieve his hatred. When he was released from Beijing, he clearly told Lu Zong that he should keep this matter in his stomach and not show any trace of it for the rest of his life. Lu Zong made a clear promise, but in the end he still broke his promise and committed such a shameful act. But he had no wings and could not return to the new capital, so he had to rush to the border and ask the Lu family for help. If the Lu family refuses to discipline them, don't blame him for being ruthless. He didn't have to do anything. He just wrote a letter to Dr. Zhang. Dr. Zhang would kill Lu Zong silently without waiting even one night. The matter has become such a big deal, my sister must be soft-hearted and did not dare to tell Dr. Zhang about this matter. Lao He was worried that it would be unsafe on the road, so this time he brought a dozen brothers and followed the eldest young master out. At this moment, he was riding on the horse. He looked at the eldest young master with a bad face and did not dare to speak. Seeing that we are still more than 10 miles away from Fengshan County, we can see the flames soaring into the sky from a distance. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1146. Chapter 1146. What are you afraid of? What's coming? Sir, it seems that there is a situation in the county town. Someone is attacking the city. Lao He was the first to draw his sword and protect Jiaran. Jiaran also frowned and quickly ordered, send someone to investigate and ask what happened in the county town. Who is attacking the city? Old Hei's veterans immediately separated into 4 or 5 and dispersed and ran towards the county seat. Lao He and others protected Jiaran and walked another 7 or 8 miles. At this time, the veterans immediately came back with an embarrassed city defense soldier. There are 2 more behind, lying across the horse's back. Sir, we took advantage of the chaos and captured 2 tongues among the attackers, and also received the messenger. The city defense soldier recognized Jiaran, got off his horse, knelt down and cried, "My lord, my lord." When the city gate was about to close tonight, a group of people made trouble. When our city defense was about to deal with it, they suddenly pulled out his waist knife and started to chop people. Our commander-in-chief led our brothers and tried our best to close the city gate, but these people went crazy and rushed at the city gate with logs. We also poured oil from the top of the wall and lit a fire. We have barely managed to defeat them. The commander sent our team out to look for you and ask for reinforcements from the border. As a result, they were discovered on the road, and I was the only one left in our team. Perhaps thinking of his brothers in the same team, this young soldier cried even harder. Lao He couldn't bear to see him like this, so he kicked him and cursed, "Why are you crying? You look like a coward." My brother died in the battle, so I picked up the knife and chopped him back for revenge. There's no point in crying. Drown with tears, enemy. Xiao Bing wiped his tears and was too choked to cry anymore. Jiaran carefully asked how many people came and what their fighting strength was, and he had some guesses in his mind. Sure enough, 2 tongues were brought up. Both of them were sallow and thin, not fully clothed, with knives on their necks. They were shaking like chaff, and the smell of urine gradually spread between their legs. "Sir, spare your life, we of you, please spare your life, we still have a wife and children at home, and we didn't kill anyone. Sir, have mercy on me, my wife is going to starve to death, and I just came out to beg for some food." Jiaran interrupted them coldly and said, "You are people from nearby villages and towns. Why are you attacking the county? Who is the leader?" "Yes, yes. Sir," a person responded quickly, "I live in Qingshan village. There is really nothing to eat at home. The wells have dried up and all the grass and leaves on the mountains have been robbed. My mother and child are crying from hunger. I just wanted to come out and find something to eat." A church leader named Amitabha was preaching, saying that the gods in the sky were so angry that it would not rain this year, the crops would fail, and we would all starve to death. The only way to survive would be to follow them. Then I ate 2 meals with them and then I was brought here. The other person was also afraid of being robbed of the opportunity to confess and be lenient, so he quickly agreed. "We didn't take knives at all, we just found a wooden stick and shouted a few times from behind." The hall leader said that there is a typing warehouse in the county, and there is countless grain in the warehouse. As long as the city is breached, he will open the warehouse and provide. Let's share the food. Jiaran was horrified when he heard this. What he feared most in a famine year was not the loss of food production, but someone inciting riots. Needless to say, this happened to him. In the 6 months since he took office, he has spent almost most of his time outside the city. Have visited all the villages and towns, seen and understood them personally. Distribute seeds, dig reservoirs, strengthen the training of city defense soldiers, and guard every grain of food in the Taiping Kang. At present, it seems that these efforts are all in vain. With natural disasters still irresistible, Taiping Kang has also become a target for thugs. "How many people are there in the Amitabha sect?" Jiaran asked again. "Where is their home base?" The 2 commoners shook their heads, and one of them replied, "I don't know, sir." This hall leader brought more than 30 people, all with knives. They didn't say where the lair was, but they said that some big shot would be coming in a few days. So the hall master is anxious to perform meritorious deeds. Jiaran looked at the veterans, they were really at the back and didn't hurt anyone. "Yes," a veteran replied, "it's very easy to catch him, and he will be knocked down with one kick." Grn motioned to Lao He to untie the two of them and said, "Go back and tell the people in your village to bring your family to the county seat as soon as possible to ensure that you don't starve to death. I will only wait for 3 days. After 3 days, if you don't enter the city, you will be treated as a gang member, and can no longer enter the county seat." The two people were extremely surprised. They didn't expect to be released so easily and have the opportunity to make a living in the county. "Thank you, sir, woo-woo, thank you, sir." The two kowtowed quickly, then helped each other and ran away. Lao He stepped forward and asked, "Sir, do you have any plans?" Grn nodded, "Uncle He, I need your help in this matter, but it's a bit dangerous." "Sir, just say it, the princess is worried about us coming here this time, so she came here to visit you. Now that this is happening, we naturally can't stand by and watch, otherwise we won't be able to see the princess when we go back," Lao He said boldly. The other veterans also nodded. "Yes, sir, we are border guards ourselves. The barbarians have killed countless people, but we are not afraid of these bandits and thugs. My lord, give the order." Grn bowed deeply, thanked them, and then made arrangements. At the head of Fengshan County City, the county magistrate, the county captain, and the city defense commander all gathered together. Looking at the thick heads under the city gate, they couldn't help but feel cold in their hearts. Today is no different from every day, except that the magistrate is out of town and not at home. But the county magistrate is away from home every day and rarely sits in the office, so everyone is used to it. Over the past 6 months, they have become familiar with the temper of the new county magistrate. As long as they perform their duties and do not cause trouble in private, the county magistrate will not interfere with their work. Even the county magistrate has sent good things to his family, and he will give them a share. As a result, when the city gate was closed, they did not wait to return to the county magistrate, but instead were greeted by bandits and thugs. In the city gate, there were more than 30 corpses covered with white linen in a row. They were all soldiers who had just died in the battle and the people who had been affected. There are still so many bandits and thugs below, and the hot oil has not been poured away. We don't know when we will attack again, and the casualties will definitely continue to increase. At this time, they have no backbone, their eyes are really red with hope, and they wish the county magistrate would fall from the sky. Suddenly, some soldiers led the steward of the Li family to the city tower and came looking for him. "My lords, our lord has returned. But now he is behind this group of thugs, and he has already found out the details of the thugs." The manager of the Li family spoke sharply, and everyone was extremely surprised, and then worried at the same time as he said a few words. "Your Excellency is in danger, do you want the city defense camp to send someone to protect you?" The county lieutenant did not forget his duty and asked. The steward of the Li family responded, "Don't worry, Lord County Captain, we are safe. Your Excellency has made a plan to cooperate inside and outside to capture the thief and the king, and I hope you all will cooperate. I hope you will go all out for the safety of Fengshan." Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1147. Chapter 1147. The magistrate of Fengshan County is here. "Okay, my lord, you are in deep danger, so you are not afraid." "How can we retreat?" both the county magistrate and the county lieutenant shouted in agreement. The commander of the city defense battalion even drew his sword to show his determination. Actually, it's not that they are really so passionate and loyal, there are just too many people outside. At this rate, if the city gate is breached, their family members will still be in the city. Moreover, this mob attack on the city must be reported to the court. This is an excellent opportunity for them to make a name for themselves and make achievements. No one wants to squat in this position for the rest of their lives, making no progress. Now the county magistrate bears most of the risks. If he doesn't dare to take a gamble anymore, he will be as ridiculous as a turtle with a shrinking neck. In this way, arrangements were made secretly and quickly on the tower. Sure enough, within half an hour, the mob outside the city gate began to attack the city again. 30 members of the Maitreya religion, together with 100 brainwashed newcomers, rushed to the front. The remaining people followed behind, cheering and bluffing. The soldiers on the city did not pour boiling oil this time, but instead poured rocks. In fact, you can shoot arrows, but you can't see clearly at night. Knowing that most of them are ordinary people, you can't bear to shoot. Maitreya sects are not all weaklings, and there are indeed a few who are quite capable. They temporarily cut down trees and tied a ladder, which they put up to half of the city wall, and they were about to use the strength to jump up the city wall. At this time, a team of more than a dozen people suddenly appeared from behind the mob and rushed in like tigers entering a flock of sheep. Almost in the blink of an eye, he reached the front and chopped down 7 or 8 Maitreya cult members with his sword. Before the Maitreya cult members could understand, the city gate was suddenly opened. Soldiers from the city defense camp, county captains, and men from the Lee family's caravan also rushed out and immediately made dumplings for the Maitreya cult members. The pros and cons were reversed, and the Maitreya sect members were also panicked and shouted loudly to urge the people. Everyone, rush, the city is full of food, if you want to survive, rush for me. As a result, the sound of the copper basin, which was louder than his, suddenly rang in all directions, deafening everyone in the dark night. Li Jiaran stood on top of a temporarily found carriage and shouted loudly to the people. Folks, I am the magistrate of Fengshan County. I know that you are incited and bewitched tonight, and you just want to grab some food for the young and old at home. I'm telling you now, you don't need to rob. I will open a panic warehouse tomorrow to release food for disaster relief. As long as you put down your sticks and don't help others, today's crime will never be investigated. Don't help the gangsters to fight against the imperial court and Tianwu. The people opposite you are also Fengshan folks, and they also have parents and relatives. We should face natural disasters together instead of fighting here. Hundreds of people are honest and responsible people, and they would not do this if they were not trying to survive. To be honest, they are weak in standing up and cheering, and lack of confidence. At this moment, someone in the crowd immediately threw sticks and shouted in agreement. Master Li is a good official. If he says to provide food, he will do so. I won't do it. I have old people and children at home. As he spoke, the man quit the team and ran to the side. The rest of the group had no idea. When they saw the leader, they followed like a swarm, throwing sticks and running away. The members of the Maitreya cult were furious, but they were so wrapped up that they had no time to care. Li Jiaran still stood on the roof of the car and shouted, "Folks, you are all my subjects of Fengshan County. I am the county magistrate, and I will not harm you. Put down your weapons quickly and forget about it. We will open a position tomorrow. If you are afraid of being retaliated by the Maitreya cult, you can take your family to the city to escape. I will keep you safe. Don't take any chances, retreat quickly, retreat, be careful of accidental injuries." More and more people retreated, and for a time only 110 people were still resisting. Li Jiaran waved his hand at the city gate, and more soldiers poured out for the final siege. Seeing victory in sight, everyone inside and outside the city gate breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a tall commoner rushed out of the crowd and threw himself on the top of the carriage. 2 veterans stood guard under the carriage and struck with their swords, but they were easily dodged by the attackers. Seeing that this man's long sword was about to fall on Li Jiaran, the county magistrate on the city tower was so frightened that his eyes almost popped out. Li Jiaran has been waiting for this person to appear. After all, after observing for so long, the so-called hall master did not show up at all. Either he ran away in fear of death, or he hid among the people and secretly controlled the siege. At this moment, he calmly took out a knife from behind his back and swung it out with all his strength. With a clang, the attacker's knife was cut from the middle and hit the roof of the car. Li Jiaren's long sword did not change its force and directly cut off the visitor's arm. The man screamed and fell off the carriage. He was held down by the veteran, and his hamstrings were cut off and tied up. Li Jiaren's body was covered with blood. Hang Dao stood on the roof of the car and shouted loudly, "The leader of Maitreya Church is captured, Fengshan will win." The inside and outside of the city gate seemed to be frozen. No one expected that the weak county magistrate could be so brave. But it was only for a moment. Soon, everyone inside and outside the city was shouting crazily, "Fengshan is mighty, Fengshan is mighty." Especially the soldiers in the city defense camp, their eyes were burning. Don't be afraid of danger, kill thieves with your own hands, and fight bloody. Who can not like and admire such a parent? Even the people who retreated could not help shouting. How come they are obsessed with following these monks and causing trouble? With such parents and officials, how could the people starve to death? Soon, the members of the Maitreya sect and others were captured. Death and arrest, Fengshan achieved a complete victory in the entire siege. Li Jiaren was surrounded by people entering the city gate, and was greeted by people all over the city. Some people kowtow, others offer the best food and drink at home, and it is as lively as daytime. Even the proud wealthy households and members of aristocratic families lowered their heads and came forward to salute. Li Jiaren responded one by one, but did not stay too long. The people outside the city had to settle down, discuss opening warehouses, and send letters to the Lu family at the border to remind them to take precautions. Of course, the most important thing is to give the imperial court an 800 miles memorial. With all natural and man-made disasters added together, the court must have a response. Otherwise, a single spark that starts a prairie fire cannot be extinguished easily. At 3 o'clock in the morning, in the border town, the laziest lazy man also went out to work to make a living. At this time, the sound of rapid horse hooves suddenly sounded outside the palace gate, causing a commotion in the front yard. Soon, the chief steward of the palace took a messenger and ran to the study to report the news. "General, General! The Queen of Zindu has passed away," the housekeeper was left panting, and he shouted as he entered the courtyard. Although news had already reached Zindu that the queen had died long ago, they just kept the mourning secret. But only General Lu and the military advisor knew the news, and everyone else kept it secret. At this moment, the butler shouted loudly, and everyone panicked. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1148. Chapter 1148. Today is not a good day. Especially when the general's wife heard the noise and came to check, she turned around and went back, leading the maids to organize the situation. Hold military power and look majestic, but in fact, you have to be careful in your actions, otherwise you will be labeled as disrespectful and treasonous. At this time, I am afraid that the entire Southwest is looking at the palace, and it must be done to perfection. Not only should the home be plain, but mourning clothes and even items of worship should be prepared. Even if you can't go to the palace to mourn, you still have to kneel at your own home. The military advisor was going to Beijing today. Hearing these words, he looked at each other and both of them breathed a sigh of relief. The queen is dead. The third princess must not be pregnant during her filial period. That would be extremely unfilial. In this way, even if the prince is really in danger, there is no need to rush to the rescue, at least it can delay for more than half a year. The two men called the messengers to come forward and inquire about some details carefully. The messenger didn't hide anything and told him all the news he knew. Finally, he took the reward and left. General Liu and his military advisor counted the days and hurriedly sent them here for 800 miles. It was already the third day that the Queen was crying. The military advisor said, "General, I'd better go to the new capital a little later. The Queen has passed away, and everyone in the new capital has to live peacefully, and I'm afraid there won't be any big trouble." The old general shook his head. "You'd better go there, I don't feel confident." The military advisor was still talking, but there was another noise outside the courtyard gate, which made both him and the old general frown. "Have you done something wrong this day? Why can't the door be closed?" The busy and exhausted chief steward appeared again, followed not by an orderly, but by a steward in a green robe and a small hat. As soon as the butler stepped forward, he said, "General, Mr. Li, the magistrate of Fengshan County, sent someone to report the news." After saying that, he stood sideways and stood vaguely between the visitor and the general. This is a loyal man. It's not that he didn't fully trust the visitor and was prepared to prevent his master from being harmed. The steward in the green hat smiled, showing his white teeth, and he looked very young. He showed a jade pendant that Li Jiaran wore around his waist when he came to visit yesterday. This proved his identity, and then he said, "Well, old General Liu, our lords rushed back to Fengshan last night, but encountered the Maitreya cult who coerced the people into rioting and attacked the county town with the intention of grabbing food. Our lords specially sent me. I came to deliver a message, asking the old general to take more precautions, fearing that chaos is coming." "What?" General Liu and the military advisor were both startled. General Liu quickly asked, "Is Mr. Li injured? How is Fengshan County now?" The steward in green hat smiled and responded, "Thank you for your concern, General. We, adults, have learned some self-defense skills since childhood. It happened that the men we brought with us were also members of our caravan. The men of the caravan were selected by the Marquis for the princess. A veteran, a good player who blocks 10 from 1. So, we adults were not injured. We even cooperated with the city's defense camp and completely shattered the track of Maitreya cult. We adults even chopped off the arm of the leader of Maitreya church with our own hands." Obviously, the steward saw it with his own eyes last night, and his eyes were still shining with excitement when he talked about it now. He held a letter in both hands and said, "This is our Lord's handwriting. The details are in it. Please take a look at it, the old general." The chief steward quickly took the letter and held it in front of the general. The general opened it and looked at it with the military advisor. Neither of them spoke for a long time. I thought that after yesterday's visit, they had already taken a high look at Li Jiaran. Unexpectedly, this young man, a small county magistrate who has been in office for half a year, is still so brave and generous. They don't know anything about Maitreya cult. If Li Jiaran does not warn and takes precautions, and the border gate is opened, then the entire Tianwu family will be in danger, and the Liu family will have to wash their necks and wait for death. Old General Liu sighed. Although he cursed his son for getting into trouble, he was still a little unconvinced in his heart. Now, this bit of dissatisfaction has completely dissipated. If you are not as good as others, you are not as good as others. This little brother, thank you sir on my behalf. When you get back I will definitely come to thank you in person the next day." "You're welcome, old general," the steward in King I saluted and didn't stop for much, turning around to leave. The housekeeper also saw that he was here to help, so he hurriedly said, "Brother, stay and have a bowl of some noodles. The journey back is not short." The steward refused, and responded, "Our Lord is gathering the people nearby. It's very busy in and outside the city. I have to go back to help. Thank you for your kindness, steward. I will try the skills of your cook again if I have the opportunity in the future." The military advisor listened to them and walked out of the courtyard. "General, I really can't enter the capital right now." The old general nodded. "The incident happened unexpectedly, and the safety of the border is our priority. The two of them got together and began to discuss countermeasures. Then General Liu went to the military camp again to gather the generals to discuss matters. Let's not talk about the impending chaos in the southwest, but just talk about Zindu. Mrs. Li and Jiyan enter the palace every day, usually kneeling for a while to make a show, and then go into the side hall. The good news was copied, the three princesses ate fruits together, and Mrs. Li took a rest. Occasionally, the prince would bring the little fox over and talk. So, neither the grandfather nor the grandson suffered much. Thanks to their blessing, the other elderly married women also received preferential treatment. Although you still have to kneel, you are in a side hall with an ice basin and tea. But those young married women were unlucky. In such weather, you have to wear layers of mourning clothes and wipe your eyes with a handkerchief from time to make you look sad. Except for half an hour's rest at noon, one kneels down for a whole day. Almost every day, pregnant women are carried down and suffer from heat stroke. One lucky person actually found out that she was pregnant, and was pardoned by the third princess and sent home to rest. For a moment, I don't know how many people were secretly gritting their teeth in jealousy. Similarly, this is also a good time for the prince to win people's hearts. Among the civil and military officials kneeling in the square, the elderly ministers also changed their places so that they did not have to be exposed to the sun. Old Mrs. Liu was among them, and Mr. Li and Mr. Wen were also called away by the young eunuch, who called them to mobilize manpower to help the Ministry of Rites arrange the funeral. Only Lu's Haiheng, who was in charge of the crops, was left behind, and he was getting darker and darker day by day. Far away at the border gate in the north of the Yangtze River, in the camp of the Border Guard Army, Wei Erniu was helping the Marquis put on his armor with his own hands. He blamed himself very much. If he hadn't saved him earlier, the Marquis would not have been injured. Although the wound medicine at home is the best in the world, after a few days of treatment, the Marquis's wound has scabbed over. But the blood loss was too much, and it cannot be made up in a short while. Mr. Ho's face is pale and he looks a bit weak no matter how he looks at it. He couldn't help but want to persuade him, but before he could speak, Li Laozi and Zhang Chen walked in. Zhang Chen became anxious when he saw Lord Ho like this. "Master Marquis, you are just a little older, are you going to go on an expedition now?" "No way." The Marquis waved his hand and replied, "Don't wait for anyone during the war. We will win the battle quickly. After we have completely recovered Jiangbei, we will have a lot of time to recuperate." Today's update is here. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1149. Chapter 1149. Rumors are stronger than tigers. Zhang Chen shook his head repeatedly and said, "Master Marquis, please give me 2 more days. No matter how urgent you are, you still need this little effort. Moreover, the barbarians are at the end of their game and are barely surviving. As long as we push forward, they will definitely collapse and completely retreat to the grassland." Li Laozi patted him on the shoulder, interrupted his words, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, stop nagging. The Marquis is also the leader of the battle when he goes on an expedition. I lead the vanguard battalion, how can I tire the Marquis? Hold on waiting for us to come back. Today is a test, and we will have to gather together to discuss matters in the evening." Zhang Chen didn't say anything. He sighed and stepped forward to help Wei Erniu. Soon, Li Laozi led 2,000 people from the pioneer battalion and rushed out of the camp first. The Marquis was dressed in golden armor, sitting high on his horse, with a sword hanging on his side. He followed with 2,000 soldiers to help the vanguard camp plunder the formation. The soldiers in the whole camp saw this and breathed a long sigh of relief. There is no secret that can be kept in the world. Although a silence order was issued, too many people saw that the Marquis was hit by an arrow. No matter how much precautions were taken, the news slowly spread in the camp. The thing that is scary about people's words is that when a thing passes through different people's mouths, they will add their own understanding and ideas, and it gradually changes its appearance. In the end, a cat is said to be a tiger. Sometimes, a cat may turn into a man, doting on his concubine and destroying his wife. The wife eventually remarries the leader of the tiger gang, and then the man is chopped into pieces. Maybe it's an exaggeration, but it definitely doesn't happen. In the past few days, there has been a temporary truce in the camp. The soldiers and generals have nothing else to do except training and patrolling, so their heads have been given space to use. Some people said that the general had an arm cut off, some said that the Marquis was not injured at all, and this was to confuse the enemy. Of course, some people said, the Marquis died in the battle. Now, the Marquis is on the expedition in good condition, and all rumors are instantly shattered. Tianwu's god of war is still there, and the Beijianjun's Dingai Shenzhen has not fallen. This is more important than anything else. As a result, the patrolling soldiers raised their heads and chests, becoming more and more proud, and the training soldiers worked harder and harder. Even the chefs in the cooking camp scooped up 2 extra ladles of rice noodles and poured them into the pot. Li Laozi has always been brave and invincible. In the Northern Expedition Army, he had long overshadowed the Marquis. The vanguard army is most willing to follow him out to fight, not for anything else but for the pleasure. No matter how many barbarians you encounter, they are just like chopping melons and vegetables. Speaking of it, the 5th prince of the barbarians was unlucky. If the Marquis had not been injured last time, he would have been hung on a pole to dry by now. In the past few days, the old man king was restricted by him. After that, he had been frightened, and he couldn't bear to find out. Li Laozi and his men approached the border gate for 50 miles, and even looked at the wall of the border gate from a distance, when they met the 5th prince and 500 barbarians. It's not that the 5th prince didn't want to bring in more men. In fact, after so many years of fighting with Tianwu, all the grassland subjects who were originally pitiful had died. Otherwise, how could they have allowed the Northern Expedition Army to call a truce in the past few days? They would have been knocking on the door a long time ago. It will take at least half a month to mobilize reinforcements from deep in the grassland. Li Laozi was so happy that he was hunting rabbits in the grass. He was so lucky. With a single order, the vanguard army rushed over. The 5th prince was not really careless. It was obvious that the people on his side would suffer less, so he turned around and ran away. The vanguard army was like a cat chasing a mouse, intercepting them left and right, and followed behind them, killing one after another. Finally, the 5th prince ran away with more than a dozen people. Jia Dun swung his riding whip angrily and shouted, "Let this kid run away again." Another captain who was friends with him rolled his eyes and cursed, "Idiot. The general let this kid go on purpose." Ah, Jia Dun couldn't understand, why didn't you kill him? Li Laozi swung the reins, slapped him lightly, and said with a smile, "If all your children and grandchildren were killed by the enemy, would you go all out and fight for revenge? If you have a grandson left by your side, and the soldiers on the opposite side are pressing down on the border, do you just think that the Green Hills are still there, so you are not afraid of running out of firewood, and the most important thing is to take a step back to preserve your bloodline?" Jia Dun blinked twice, as if he understood. The captain couldn't see it, so he had to explain it to him. "We have been marching north for so many years, and we are about to drive the barbarians out of the border. Victory is in sight. Neither the Marquis nor the general wanted to suffer too many casualties, so they left a prince for the Khan. He would only retreat to the grassland if he had any scruples. Instead of overwhelming everyone and fighting to the death with us." Jia Dun was unconvinced and retorted, It's impossible. All the troops were killed in the battle. What will happen to the grassland in the future? King Khan will definitely not do this. King Khan's whole family is dead, so he doesn't care about the grassland. Maybe he will be reborn as a Tianwu people in his next life, Li Laozi added, which made the surrounding soldiers laugh. After the battlefield was cleaned up, the Marquis also arrived with his team. The surrounding terrain has been surveyed a long time ago, and the Marquis knew it well. Now he said, "How is it? Have you found anything new?" Li Laozi told the story of the fifth prince's escape, and finally pulled out a bag of dry food that had been torn off the corpse of a barbarian, and said, "Master Marquis, the barbarians have nothing to eat. These people are following the fifth prince, and they are better than ordinary people. The food for the soldiers and slaves is good, but it's just grass seed powder and no dried meat." After the Marquis looked at it carefully, he also nodded. In the past 10 years, although we in Tianwu have retreated to the south of the Yangtze River, we have high-yield grains and our national strength has not declined. On the contrary, we have recuperated and become much stronger. It's true that the barbarians have occupied the north of the Yangtze River. They don't know how to grow crops and produce food, and most of the people are here to enjoy themselves. There is no one to graze cattle and sheep on the grassland. One thing goes up and the other goes down, so it's not surprising that things are happening now. Go back, discuss matters at night, and try to drive the barbarians out of the pass for 100 miles in one go. Eliminate as many barbarians as possible, so that they will not be able to recover in 20 years, and to ensure that Tianwu is safe for 20 years. Li Laozi responded, "I hope so, that is." There were many people around, so it was difficult for him to explain clearly, but he still asked, "Even if that person is not found, he is always a hidden danger. Do you want to wait a little longer?" "We can't wait any longer. The opportunity is fleeting." The Marquis waved his hands and looked at the distant border with a deep and persistent gaze. "That person was targeting me. Even if something really happened, it was only me. Compared with the 10 years of the northern expedition and the imminent recovery of the mountains and rivers, my own safety is nothing to worry about." Li Laozi still wanted to persuade him, but in the end he swallowed his words. The Marquis treats him like a brother and has great trust in him. But whatever the Marquis decides, once he says it, it will never change. At this time, he couldn't help but think of his daughter. "If my daughter were here, she would definitely make the Marquis change his mind." Pity. As soon as everyone returned to the camp, Yeshan brought news about Zindu. "The queen has passed away." Li Laozi sighed at that time. He had no reason to persuade the Marquis anymore. Since the man in the palace has released the news of the queen's death, it means that he has done everything he wanted to do. After the queen's funeral, the first one to bear the brunt was definitely the Northern Expeditionary Army. Whether it's through underhanded assassination or blatantly seizing power and credit, it's all extremely troublesome. Now, the best response is to do nothing without stopping, immediately drive the barbarians out of the border and end the northern expedition. Dong, 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 the dull gathering drum sounded, and the lights in the main tent were brightly lit. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1150. Chapter 1150, After natural disasters, there must be disasters from man. Summer mornings always come very early. People who have been busy all day seem to find that not long after they lie down, the sky becomes white. In Broken Gold Beach, the patrol team has gone back to catch up on their sleep. The village chief walked out of his home with his hands behind his back, went to the door of Lee's house to pet two big dogs, asked Granny Lin and others, and found out that there was nothing going on at the Lee family's old house, so he began his day's inspection. Every family in the village was very quiet because they had sent away their children and young people. No one was used to it at first, but it got better after a few days. At least there was no delay in work. Several villages such as Dawaishu were indeed frightened, and the villagers were very peaceful. With Li Zheng in charge on weekdays, apart from doing farm work, not only has he never been to Zinkan No. 2 village, he has not even been to the city. I am afraid that at such a time, I will get into trouble and the whole family will be unlucky. The melon vines in the fields have been cleared and replanted quickly. The cabbages, radishes, and other things replanted are growing well. From a distance, you can see a patch of fresh green, which makes people feel good. There are also orchards on the mountain, which are even more lush. Against the background of the surrounding yellowing mountain forests, the scorpion cake is really eye-catching. This is the result of the villagers' hard work day and night. The small river outside the village is now only a thin trickle as thick as a wrist and may stop flowing at any time. Of course it was because of the hot weather, but also because most of the river water was taken away by the villagers to the fields and mountains for irrigation. Recently, people are worried that the river will completely stop flowing and the villages downstream will have no water to drink, so everyone has started carrying water from the village again. When the wells were first dug, the village spent a lot of money to build deep wells, but now most of them have dried up, and only 3 or 4 of them still have water. I really don't know when the water in the well will be completely exhausted. The village chief felt mixed feelings. Having lived for most of his life, he knows how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. If everyone is farming, and other people suffer half the disaster, but your field has a good harvest, that person will only envy you, and even fawn over you and ask how you planted the crops. But the family has lost its production and harvested nothing. The young and old in the family are about to starve to death, but your fields are full of golden rice. That's just plainly seeking hatred, just waiting to be robbed. The green mountains and the new green on the ground in front of us are the rice harvested by the family when they had no crops. It's great, but it's also dangerous. The village chief sighed, wishing he could run like a mouse these days. Hurry up and wait for another month, the fruits will be sold, and the autumn vegetables, peanuts, sweet potatoes, and corn will be harvested, so I will feel relieved. Unfortunately, what you are afraid of is what comes. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it is too hot outside. The villagers go home one after another to enjoy the cool weather, waiting for the sun to set before continuing to work. There were old and young people who did not want to sleep, sitting under the big tree at the entrance of the village, shaking their cattail fans and straw hats, and chatting. I don't know where the children have gone. They should be here soon, right? A man asked in a low voice, thinking about the children. The villagers next to him couldn't help but slap him and scolded him with a smile. You can do it? I have to ask this question so many times a day. It's really more rude than a woman. There is a master's family. These boys went to the south to enjoy the blessings. I am afraid they have already seen the sea and the big ship. They are so happy that they don't think of you as a father at all. The man was not angry either, and responded with a smile, that's good. I don't know when I can go and see it, but the boys can feast their eyes first. Another old man also said, my grandson also said that he is going to go fishing. When the time comes, he will bring me a fish as big as a house. Everyone laughed when they heard this and responded one after another. My daughter also said, bring me pearls as big as steamed buns. My son said, find me coral to grind my hairpins on. Speaking of children, it is extremely lively under the big tree. At this moment, a veteran from the second village suddenly came running up on horseback, shouting from a distance. Village chief, someone is making trouble at the bridge, there are more than a dozen people. This is not bad. The village chief immediately shouted to the villagers, and with a huff, more than 20 people, old and young, rushed to the second village. There is a wooden fence at the end of the bridge. People from the second village are guarding the wooden fence, and there are a dozen strangers outside the fence. Originally, the village chief and others thought it was some blind family who came to cause trouble. But he frowned when he saw these strangers. There were more than a dozen people, some old and some young, all dressed in rags. The half-grown children only had rags covering their buttocks, and the rest were naked and tanned. Looking at the look again, the complexion is sallow and the muscles are thin, the lips are chapped, and the bones are skinny. This is really even worse than when they fled from the Northland. Such a person should not be harmful to his own family. A few veterans guarding the gate were also in a dilemma. When they saw the village chief, they quickly told the story. "Village chief, these people came to us an hour ago and said they were too thirsty and asked for a bowl of water. We looked so pitiful and gave them a bucket of water. But after they finished drinking, they said they were hungry again and asked for green vegetables from the field to fill their stomachs. We also picked up a dozen raw potatoes, and they didn't leave after they finished eating. They clamored to stay and work, even if they sold themselves into slavery. We told the village not to accept outsiders, but they didn't listen and stayed here and refused to leave." After hearing this, the village chief and others breathed a long sigh of relief, but they couldn't help but stare at the veteran who reported the news. When he shouted, everyone thought someone was knocking on the door. But these are obviously a group of people fleeing from famine. The veteran touched his nose and felt very innocent. He was in a hurry and everyone came running over before he could explain clearly. At this moment, the dozen or so people who also knew the staple food of this place had arrived. They all gathered in front of the fence and knelt down for a while. An old man cried and begged in a dry and hoarse voice. "Dear nobles, have mercy on us poor people, we really couldn't survive, so we abandoned our homes and everything and ran out to find a way out. We ate grass and leaves along the way before we got here. Please have mercy on the nobles and accept us. We are willing to work as cattle or horses, just to survive." A thin woman with sunken eyes pushed two 7 or 8-year-old children forward and begged urgently, "It's okay for the nobles not to want us. Just accept these 2 children. They eat. I can only sweep the floor, feed chickens and pigs, or even work in the fields. Please be kind to me, please save my life." The 2 children have big heads and small necks. They were pushed out by the mother and were still a little confused. At this moment, they turned around and hugged the woman, crying at the top of their lungs, "Mom, don't leave us, we love you, we won't leave, we won't leave." The woman was afraid that the children would be rejected, so she raised her hand and beat them. She was so anxious that she wanted to faint. Their whole family had fled all the way from the south, and the village in front of them seemed to be the richest. Every house is brand new and clean, and the people in the village are well dressed. The fields are green and the mountains are also green, as if there is no shortage of water at all. Most importantly, the people here are kind. They were beaten, scolded, and driven away wherever they went to beg for food. Only here did they get clean water and food. You can survive here. The woman is not considered smart, but she is wise enough to survive for her son. End of this chapter.